But the reason I wanted to talk to you is because, especially with what's gone on this year with the pandemic and just how things are going, I really enjoyed the content of your YouTube videos that you've been putting up. I've watched every single one, and I've shared them on my social media stuff because I like what you have to say for sure. And I just wish more people, especially given all this downtime, were like not necessarily thinking along those lines, but just asking those kind of questions of themselves, especially in light of just how everything is shut down and that kind of thing. It ties in with what I know about you from my punk rock past, which is I was a big fan of the Big Boys. And I knew of and enjoyed Poison 13. And I know that's 30, 40 years ago. And I know you've done plenty of stuff since. But I mean, like, you know, what I know about you is that, and that you still live in Texas and that you still play music, obviously. And then it just seems like you've just gone on this little journey. And I was just kind of curious about how you ended up being in the situation that you were in, and why you're doing what you're doing now, and how you ended up getting to that spot to where this is what you want to do. Because the last I knew of you or saw of you was a couple of years ago when I saw some video of you and Tim talking about, you know, a lot of the Big Boys records have been reissued. I think this one was for Where's My Towel?
Yeah.
And you looked a little different then, and you look different now. So yeah. I figured something must have happened. So I'm just kind of curious about what were the events that just led to what you're doing now? I mean, would you call what you're doing, are you like a teacher? What exactly?
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm trying to figure it out myself. The broad strokes are, I started playing music as a kid. First real band was the Big Boys at 18 years old. Did that for 4 or 5 years, did Poison 13, moved to Los Angeles, did Junkyard for 4 or 5 years, had a great time doing that. By the time that was over in about 93, I had also spiraled off into a pretty serious heroin addiction. Okay. You know, my drug and alcohol use sort of increased all the way through all those bands, but it wasn't really a problem until around 89 or 90. Everybody in LA was strung out back then. And when Junkyard ended, as the grunge scene was exploding, I moved back to Texas in an attempt to get sober, but moving doesn't help. They have dope wherever you go. And eventually hit a wall and got, you know, managed to get some help and get clean at the end of 1998, been sober ever since. And that allowed me to go back and start playing music again. Junkyard sort of reformed and toured the world for a while. They're continuing to do it without me because I don't want to do that anymore. But I put a number of other bands together. And along the way, a lot of the 12-step approach to spirituality didn't speak to me because I'm not a religious person and I don't really believe in God. But I found a way to make that stuff work without any of that. Apparently none of that's necessary. It's all just got tacked on. And I don't know whether it's years of songwriting or just the way my brain works or some combination of the two. But from fairly early in my recovery, people would tell me that when I talked about the ideas around spirituality, I was doing it in a way that was both more concise and simpler, and also using a lot of analogies that made the points clearer than they were getting from anybody else. Right. And I never quite knew what to do with that information. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't talk a lot when I was young. You know, I wasn't thinking this way, but this just sort of started happening. Yeah. And but I went, okay, thanks. And I just kept going and I just kept going and I just kept going. About 5 years ago, 2 things happened in quick succession. One, I was having some conversations with some people outside of the spiritual world I was working in. One was a Hindu priest, one was a Buddhist monk. And in one form or another, they both kept talking about this other piece of humility that nobody much talks about. And one of the guys was saying, most people, when you say humble, what they mean is smaller, be smaller. But humility doesn't mean small, it means right-sized. It means accepting your limitations, but it also means owning your talents.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to talk about that owning your talents part because it's scary and it requires being responsible for something. And the Hindu guy was telling me, like, every single person on the planet is born with a gift, something that's easy for you that's not easy for your buddies.
Sure.
And that at some point, hopefully, we get to a place in our spiritual evolution or whatever where we can start having the bandwidth to wonder what that is and how do I develop it for the benefit of myself and the world. And this talking about spirituality thing, he was going, well, that's your deal. What are you going to do with that? And I went, I got no idea. And then less than a month later, I got approached by a friend who was on the board of directors at this nonprofit treatment center saying, we just let go the entire staff and we need somebody like you to put some center mass back into the spiritual piece. And I was going, like, I don't know how to work at a treatment center. I've never done anything like that. He's going, yeah, you'll be fine. And so I said, okay. And so I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And now I'm at a place where after 5 years of doing that, it seems like I have a mentor who's encouraging me to take it to another level, especially with all the chaos that's going on out there. And now not just addicts, but everybody is sort of lost. And so many people my age and younger, especially from my little corner of the world, don't want anything to do with religion or religious people. It just doesn't speak to us. Even putting aside the animosity and all the true things about religion, all the rest of that stuff, it just doesn't resonate with us at all. But for just like me, the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. Like that meant, I wasn't into spirituality either because I grew up in Austin in the 70s and 80s where spirituality meant like tie-dyed hemp clothing and an unread Tao Te Ching and a stolen Buddha statue and anger all the time. I was like, that doesn't look attractive,
Right.
But I found this way to approach life that's practical and produces reproducible results. And I don't think I'm special. And I think I know that the people who approach it the way I approach it get the same sort of results as me. And so now I'm trying to find a way to put that out there. People keep saying, write a book, but I've never written a book. I don't know how to do that. So I'm starting with a YouTube channel because I like to talk.
Yeah. Well, you teach online classes, and I guess before the pandemic, you had, I guess people would come and see you speak on these things.
Well, I'm working at a drug and alcohol treatment center. And so I am teaching classes there every day. And after the first couple of years, a bunch of the alumni came back and said, we're not hearing things the way you talk about them out there in the 12-step community. Could you videotape your classes so that we can keep listening to the way you talk about it? So I did that and stuck those up on YouTube. And the same YouTube channel that has the stuff I've been putting up on Facebook has all of those 12-step classes. And I'm beginning to shoot some more of that in smaller chunks to talk more specifically about the way I think about spirituality that removes the need to believe in anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that and keep it under 8 minutes because nobody wants to watch me for 45 minutes.
You never know. So how has the reaction been? Because like when I share it, I don't understand how Facebook and all these things work as far as like why they allow certain people to see stuff and not others. But it seems like there's a handful of people that really respond quite favorably to what you say, and it doesn't seem like it's like tons and tons of people. Of course, it's just on my page, but the people that like it really like it, and I feel like I was one of those people. So I was kind of wondering what kind of reaction have you gotten so far doing these things?
It's all been really positive. Like I said, it's not millions of people. It's hundreds or maybe thousands on a couple of occasions. But that's hundreds or thousands more than would have heard it otherwise. So, happily my income's not tied to it, and so I can just do it. And the goal for me here, I've gotten through some challenges over the last month, health-wise and some other stuff. And so the goal for me now is I'm getting organized over the next 4 or 5 days and actually writing some stuff down to help, because I'm going to start trying to put out 1 or 2 a week and just get into this because it's a practice. And then I'm also working on some slightly longer things that if you're interested in the thing I talked about in the 5-minute video, you can go watch this thing that explains it more in depth and tells you what your job is if you want to try to do this thing. Because the idea is to try and take the thing that I'm doing that's turned my life from a place in 1998 where I overdosed and died 4 times and was brought back to life by the paramedics. And I spent all day, every day, terrified of dying and wishing I were dead. I was miserable. And then even after I got sober, I spent the first 2 or 3 years, that's literally what the next video is that I'm working on now, is doing this thing called Eeyoring. Where like, no matter what's happening, it sucks.
And I don't, Eeyore, you mean Eeyore from
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh, how you
right.
doing?
You know, and it's like, I don't want to be the guy who walks around thinking everything sucks all the time, but I can't seem to stop being that guy. And examining what was going on with me led me to the core of how I understand spirituality now, which is, the short version is, I think my thinking and your thinking, well, I think spirituality is not a choice. I think everybody has a spirit, just like they have a body and a mind.
Sure.
And I think that my thinking and everybody else's thinking is largely a product of the spiritual condition I'm in while I'm thinking. Like if I'm at peace inside, my thinking is clear and my actions are effective. But if I'm anxious or I'm depressed or I'm whatever and all riled up in here, my thinking gets filtered through that, and it's not clear and it's not effective, and it leads to that negativity. And so if I can figure out a way to fill this up and calm this down, then I won't be that guy anymore.
Right.
And that's what the rest of the process is about, is finding a way. Like, drugs and alcohol were never my problem. My problem was just being Chris and showing up for life. And, you know, it took copious amounts of drugs and alcohol by the end just to show up and pay my cable bill, you know. And then I discovered this, you know, this approach to life that was so much more effective, that has allowed my life to, you know, the motto in my world now is big, cool life. Like, I want a big, cool life. And I want it to be bigger and cooler this year than it was last year. And I want it to do it by itself. And if I do things right, that's what happens. And my job is just fucking hang on and keep up, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, without trying, I just got a promotion at work, and now I'm in charge of this whole thing. And they're giving me the resources to do this thing I've been talking about for 4 years into a much longer continuum of care that's going to be much more helpful at keeping people sober and really helping them get their feet under them. And now I have the resources to do it. Oh, by the way, you're in charge of it, and the state of Texas wants some reporting. And I'm going, oh no. So that's freaking me out. But I have tools, and in a month I'll know how to do it.
Wow. Well, that's really exciting, actually.
You know, and then like, as soon as that came up, I got an offer from a friend of mine who's been sober a really long time, who's also a musician. He's going like, you know, I've been thinking about starting something spirituality and recovery related. You know, would you be interested in doing a podcast with me? And I went, yeah, let's give it a shot. And then I got another call from a guy who's managing a grant from the state of Texas, or a federal grant to the University of Texas, to open some sober houses for people who are on Suboxone, medically assisted treatment for opioid addiction. There's not much support out there for them, and there's a real disconnect between the recovery community and the doctors that are doing the prescribing, and the program I get to be a part of and part of designing helps bridge that gap and collect some real meaningful data about how to use those tools to keep people from dying while we get them into an actual life of recovery, and helping to try and figure out who needs to stay on it and who just needs to be on it for a little while. And it's super exciting. And I'm going from being this idiot guitar player dude who can't even hardly show up for anything to having that level of responsibility. But I have the tools to look at the things that are scaring me and to ask for help, so that I can show up and do them a few times. And after I've done them a few times, they won't scare me anymore. And then somebody else will show up. You know?
Oh yeah. That's what sometimes that's what it seems like life is all about, replacing one worry with another worry. Once you solve the one worry, because I had my entire life up until a certain point was being afraid of doing certain things, because, you know, I never did them before. Like, and then when I finally would do them, time and time again, it was like, why was I so afraid of this? This was no big deal at all, you know? Right. And that, I kind of got a handle on that, but that was just one of those kind of things, I guess.
Well, like, and you know, and unless you're forced into a corner like I was by addiction, a lot of people they're just doing the best they can to get through the day. The problem with that approach is, if I just sort of wing my way through something, I get to the other side and okay, it's not scary anymore, but what did I do to get here? I don't know. I can't remember. And then, so the next time something's scary, I got to make up a process all over again, as opposed to the approach that I'm doing, which is the same tools every time, no matter what the challenge is, same tools, same way of looking at it, same way of figuring out what I'm really afraid of, same way of figuring out and being humble enough to admit that, like, I can do 80% of this on my own, but the other 20%, if I don't get some sort of spiritual help or help from the support from people around me, it's not going to happen.
Sure.
And so, and being willing to ask for that help from whichever source it is I need it from, or all of them, you know, and then I do it and it works. And then next time I get afraid of some new thing, I go, wait a minute, new problem, same tools, new problem, same tools,
Right.
you know, and it just lets life keep getting bigger and giving me new stuff. You know, my wife likes to joke that she and I are living the effects of an ill-considered prayer for abundance. Like, it would be nice if our life stopped getting better just for a few minutes. You know?
Let's just have a plateau for a little bit.
Yeah. Like this, maybe awesome will be good for just a minute. Thank you very much. You know, but in 21 years, it's shown no signs of slowing down. You know, and so I'm trying to, the whole point of doing all this is that I know I'm not special, because I've got buddies that are doing what I do and they're having the same experience. But because apparently one of my talents is talking about it, I'm now responsible for talking about it. I can't pretend I don't know that.
Yeah.
So I'm having to find ways to share it, and I'm eventually going to have to find ways to find people who know how to spread that to a larger audience, because I don't know how to do that either. My job is the talking, not figuring out the Facebook and YouTube stuff. But But I have friends who do that for a living. So once I'm ready, they said, when you've done 20 or 30 videos and you're ready and you know what you're doing, call me and then we'll have something to work with. So I'm not there yet. So.
Right. Well, I mean, this what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm doing either, but it was definitely inspired by watching, even though what I'm doing has nothing to do with what you're doing, it was inspired by watching you and a few other people do similar things, as putting yourself out there and videos talking about things with people. And you just have to get in there and do it, I guess. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you know, the only way to get good at something is to be bad at it first, you know? So show up and suck is my motto.
Right. Well, like, the other thing I liked about what you have to say is that, like, I'm trying to put this in the right way. It's like you're talking to anybody that wants to hear you, but I think it resonates with me because I've already gone through being angry at this year, being angry at other people. You know, I spent I draw. So what I did was I just spent a lot of time drawing stuff. And then I vented about what was going on with the pandemic and stuff. And I was outraged, and it was fun. You know, it's fun to do that stuff. And I drew all these things called Moranovirus instead of coronavirus, Moranovirus. And then I just got to the point where, like, it was fun to blow off steam, but I was paying too much attention. There was no joy. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't even like Mad Magazine funny anymore. It was like,
no, it's too much negative energy.
It's just the same thing over and over, and just how people are just pitted against each other. And I think the stuff you're talking about, you're appealing to people that kind of go, well, I can't change anybody. I can't change the world. I can only change myself and how I react to what's going on around me, and making peace with that. And it's almost like you're speaking to people that are looking inward a little bit instead of blaming. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, well, that's it. 100%. It's like, I think I even said it in one of the videos. Like, I can't control how people act and how people think, but I can control my proximity to them. And if you're angry all the time and I'm around you all the time, it's exhausting.
Oh yeah.
And the spiritual health that it drains from me being around that negativity turns me negative too. And so I have to be able to protect myself. And part of that is being able to look at the people who I violently disagree with and who I cannot understand why they're holding the ideas that they're holding, and understand that they're not different than me. They're afraid just like everybody else is afraid. It's just that their solution to their fear is completely different from my solution to mine.
Sure.
And, it's like I've been thinking about the Trump supporter people, and it's like there are three types of people who are actively supporting that man. The very rich who are able to strip mine the system while he's in power. The comfortable middle and upper middle class white people who do not like to be reminded that there is anybody in the world other than themselves.
Right.
And having their nose rubbed in the fact that there are black people being hurt or gay people out there, period, is like the America that they want made great again is the one where they get to pretend there's nobody out there but them.
Sure.
But the vast majority, and this is the saddest part, the vast majority of his supporters, you can't tell them you're voting against your self-interest because they don't have self-interest. They've given up. They don't want anything from their candidate. What they want is somebody who hates the people they hate and will attack the people they hate from a position of power. It's the politics of resentment. And the problem is, I've been a guy who's trapped in resentment, and you can't talk me out of it. I know it's eating me alive. I don't give a fuck. It's eating me alive, and I don't got any ways out. And it's a miserable, miserable, terrifying place to live. Bless their hearts. God, it sucks for those people. It's like they got no hope. They've given up on hope. How do we change the world in a way that makes them believe there's anything that can be better? I don't know the answer other than burn it all down. And that's not an answer.
No.
So I'm familiar with trying to make everyone as miserable as I am, not making the world feel better,
Right.
But bless their hearts, I don't have to hate them. I also don't want to be around them. I'm not going to talk to them. I can't win them over. Can't change their minds.
No.
All I can do, I have a guy that I mentor who every once in a while he calls me because he's paying too much attention to social media and he gets him all riled up. And I remind him that I can't change the outcome of the election today, but there are things I can do today that will make me feel good that I'm trying to play my part. And when it comes time, there are things that I can do that will be outside of my comfort zone that will make me feel like I'm playing my part. He has already put a post on Facebook letting people know that when early voting starts, he will drive them to the polls if they need a ride. And he's constantly he's joined a group of people who are mailing out voter registrations to people and sending postcards, please vote, and please let us know. It's like not something he would ever do normally, but
sure.
The last election was swung by less than 20,000 votes in 4 different states.
Yeah.
So, it's like I'm doing what I can. I'm changing the things I can change and letting go of the things I can't change. There's no point in being angry about the things I can't change. I can't change them.
Exactly.
And any effort I spend being angry about the things I can't change distracts me from the things I can do right this minute.
Yeah.
And whether that's fucking Trump and the loony right or the fact that my car's making a noise and I've been listening to it for 4 days without calling the goddamn mechanic.
Right.
I'm going to understand it away, because I do that too.
Sure.
It's all still fear.
Yeah. Well, the thing I took away from, like I said, I did all this stuff and stopped, because I just didn't want to. I said what I had to say, and then I questioned why I even said anything, and I think initially it was because I feel like when all the stuff started with the pandemic, I feel like it was pretty obviously just an issue of science, and just watching the entire, not even just this country, the one that we live in, but just watching people turn it into this thing that I thought was easy to understand into this thing where people took sides, and it was this political thing. And do you have any thoughts about why? I thought that was this one occasion in the world where people could put aside their differences, regardless of who they liked.
And that absolutely would have happened, except that the president believes that it was a story to spin rather than a reality to manage.
Yeah.
And and that anything that was bad for his polling numbers and anything that was bad for his ratings, we're going to pretend it wasn't there. We're going to minimize. And the more people were pointing out how badly things were going, the more he dug in, because nobody's more defensive than somebody who knows they're fucking wrong.
Exactly.
And because his base is in lockstep behind him, it became this furious political movement, especially when it was people who well, anybody who attacks him on anything is the enemy. It doesn't matter what their political bent is. He'll attack anybody who questions him. But, you know, the fact that any of the questions at all were coming from the other side of the aisle just made it, you know, those people are the enemy, and that's why they like him, because he hates them, who they hate, and he tells them who to hate, and they do it, and this is freedom. It's freedom. It's like, fuck you, freedom.
Freedom. Well, I've said this to a lot of people, but it's like, you know, what are people being asked to do? You know, this isn't, you know, we're not living in the Diary of Anne Frank. All you have to do is just do this fucking simple thing, and people can do it. And my partner had this great analogy, which is like, this is almost like a like when you go to the Grand Canyon and you see it for the first time, like I did recently. You know, it's very awe-inspiring and terrifying. You know, it's like, the reality is, if you get close to that edge, you're fucking going over and you're dead, you know? Yeah. And we went there and we couldn't fucking believe all the people that we saw dancing on the edge, taking their kids out on the edge. And it's just like, you know, she said, well, the pandemic, for some people, it's kind of like a non-tangible Grand Canyon, you know, or like they know, they just can't process that this is really here and really happening. So they're just going to dance on the edge and you know, do whatever.
And I also believe that for a lot of people, almost regardless of political bent, right? It's like they don't have the spiritual tools to manage something that's this hard for this long. Like, one of the things about a lot of my friends who are in the recovery world is like, we're built for this shit because we've been fighting an invisible disease that's trying to kill us in an ever-changing world the whole time we've been sober. We're built for this, and we struggle with it a little bit. But like, what I saw, and what I even saw a lot of people in the recovery community do, was duck their head and hold their breath, trying to just let it blow past them, and when it's over, then we'll be okay again, not realizing that it's not going to be over for 1.5 years or 2 years. And there are an awful lot of people who are living at a level of resentment and fear and anger, so they have no ability to hold their breath at all. And very quickly, the shelter-in-place lockdown and all that just became undoable. It's like trying to hold your breath and swim to the other side of the pool when you don't know how far the other side of the pool is. And there are people who swam as hard and fast as they could, and then they popped up in the middle, and now they're pretending they're not in a pool. You know, and like, they're just going, fuck this, I can't see it, it's all fine. It's like, and it's not because, I don't think it's really because they don't believe the science. I believe they're convincing themselves they don't because they just cannot do it if that's real. They can't do it. They're too afraid. Like, I'm already barely making it, and now I'm not even getting to work. And I don't understand how the goddamn website works, because I don't do websites. And now I can't, and it's broken, and I can't get through, and I'm not getting my unemployment, and I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. Make it stop. And there's no, and you know, and then they get afraid because, like, you know, every time Fauci says something, it changes. What is he, lying? It's like, no, we've never done this. It's beyond their imagination that this is something no one knows about.
Yeah, this is like
my brain, and I'm fairly intelligent still. You
know? This is like brand new territory. They don't know what's going to happen, because this is the first time in all of our lifetimes when something like this has actually happened.
Right.
So people want answers right away, and you can't get them.
Yeah. So, you know, bless their hearts. They're afraid. They're railing against it. But anger is just fear pointed outwards. When I feel threatened, I respond. You know, my fight or flight instincts kick in, and it's either, and anger is the fight part of fight or flight, and self-pity is the other side of the same coin. And, you know,
where does self-hate enter into that equation?
If I end up hopeless for too long, well, like I said, my thinking is based on my spiritual condition. If my spiritual condition gets, so that means my opinion of me is based on my spiritual condition.
Yeah.
That's why there tends to be a disconnect between me, my opinion of me, and other people's opinion of me. You know, it's like there was a long time in my life when I thought if people knew who I really was, they wouldn't even let me come around anymore. You know, and but your experience of me is based on your firsthand experience with me. Your opinion is based on your experience, and my opinion is based on my shitty spiritual condition. One of those is more accurate. You know?
Oh, you mean you're talking about how you view yourself versus people that might know you or like something that you've done,
right?
And how that's always totally different.
Right, but the self-hate portion of it comes in when I get so spiritually adrift that I reach down inside to my little spiritual center here, and all I can find is blackness and emptiness, and I'm a fucking loser, and it's what's the point? Like, and I lived that way for years. And then I began to practice these tools that began to fill that tank, and I don't have that opinion of me anymore. And I understand that if I let myself get into that spiritually unfit place again, I will think that about me again, and I will start doing things that I know don't work, and I won't be able to stop. You know, because my actions are based on my thinking, and if my thinking is stuck coming through that miserable condition, I will do shit that doesn't work, and I know it doesn't work, and I can't stop doing it.
All right. Well, I'll ask you a few more questions, and then I'll wrap this up. I appreciate you letting me talk to you. Does any sense of being grateful or having gratitude enter into anything that you're speaking of? Because I'll just set this up. Like things have been they've been pretty good despite the craziness and not being able to really do anything, because I'm sort of an introverted artistic type that doesn't get out much. And my partner, she's the same way. We both do exactly the same things, and we have children, and we just work around all that stuff. And like, we're still getting work. You know, people almost seem like they want more stuff, more artwork, because they're home and they can't do anything, and they're in front of their computers, and they might want to, you know, buy something. So it seems like this year, you know, things have been mostly the same, and I feel really grateful for having a daughter, really grateful for my partner, for her child, the fact that anybody gives a shit about whether I draw something or not, or played some fucking music from 30 years ago. For anybody to even give a shit, because nobody has to, I feel very, I don't know if humble's the word. I'm just kind of I'm grateful for what I have and not upset about what I don't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Gratitude's a big piece, not only of staying in a solid spiritual place, but it's an actual practice, right? Like, one of the things that I have done in the past, and that I get people who are going through struggles to do, is to physically write a gratitude list every day. 5 things, 10 things, usually 5, because people I know are lazy. But there's a thing that happens when you write. When I take an idea out of my head and put it onto paper, it becomes clear and concrete.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. I have to write down.
Yeah, so I take these things that I'm grateful for, and I love the definition of gratitude that I like best is that real gratitude is when I can remember what it was like before the gift was received. So I don't want to say like, oh, I'm grateful for these shoes because I can't remember not having these shoes, you know. But I'm grateful that these shoes are comfortable because I remember having uncomfortable shoes, you know. And it doesn't have to be big stuff, right? Like I'm grateful that it rained, like fucking awesome. I'm grateful that it rained and that I can be indoors during it, you know. Like I'm grateful that when I go up that my car starts every time I get in it, because that didn't for a long time. That was anybody's guess, you know. But if I will write 5 or 10 of those things down on a piece of paper, and here's the best part. The neural pathways used to read things off a piece of paper and put them back into my head are separate from the ones used to take them out of my head and put them onto paper. So when I read something back off the paper, it's almost like reading something someone else wrote. There's just a little cognitive slip between writing it and reading it back. This is why I always thought journaling was stupid. Why would I journal? It's in my head already. but it's not just the writing it and getting clarity from writing it. It's the reading it back to see what it is I wrote down and what it means.
Sure.
But when each thing I'm grateful for, I experience the gratitude while I'm thinking about it and writing it down. And then I think about the next thing and I experience the gratitude for that and I write it down. And I think about the next thing and I experience that gratitude and I write it down. But when I read the list back, I experience the cumulative gratitude for all of those things at once. It's the only way to do that. And when I do that, it's real hard to hold on to that negative center. It just sort of pops it out of the way and the power flows through me and I go, life's hard, but there's different, that's fundamentally different than life sucks.
That's really good. I paused for a second because that was a good ending statement. So well, let me ask you one or two more questions, and I'll let you go. And
Sure.
Again, thanks. But this is a Big Boys related question, and being one of the three main people with assorted drummers over the years that actually were in the Big Boys, I talked to this friend of mine, Chris Sherry, who the other day, and we spent a good deal of the interview talking about our mutual appreciation for what you guys did back then. And I was wondering, is it kind of bizarre to have been a part of something and done something that was is it 35, 40 years ago at this point? It was a long time ago. But it seems like with the passing of time, more and more people are interested in not just the music that you guys made, but just everything, just the way you did stuff, what you said, the attitude about it. And it kind of occurred to me that what the Big Boys did was a really welcoming, positive, life-affirming sort of thing. And the only other band that I can think of that had that sort of life-affirming feeling for me were the Minutemen, who every once in a while the two bands could sound sort of similar.
Yeah.
I think it must be kind of weird also that was so long ago, and all the people involved have done so much stuff since, but is it still nice to hear from people that are touched by this thing that you guys did so long ago? Are you surprised by it?
I'm not surprised anymore. Something happened in the 90s that had never happened before, which every youth movement was replaced by another youth movement prior to that. But as the 90s began and the internet began and the rest of it, not only did nothing ever go away again, but everything came back.
Right.
It just disappeared because there was no way to find out about it. Once it was gone, it was gone. And I'm proud of the fact that we created this thing without trying that had some legs. And that, I go back and listen, and I part of me understands, people who talk about the band who were there when the band was happening get this faraway look in their eyes. And it took me a while to understand what they're remembering is what it was like to be part of that and not just the music. But I don't want to discount the music, because every once in a while I go back and listen and go, we did a lot of really cool music.
It did, man. And it was all really varied too. It was
right.
It wasn't all.
We took that anarchy thing to mean creative anarchy and just do whatever you want. And every time we heard anything we liked, we experimented with it ourselves. We were sponges, and we were just being who we were. And the fact of being who we were without thinking about it had a huge influence on the queercore crowd later. We weren't thinking about, there were other bands. I mean, the Dicks were more aggressive about Gary being gay and stuff. Biscuit was just Biscuit. We weren't making a point of it, but we also weren't not making a point of it. And we were saying, go start your own band, mostly because we wanted bands to go see, not yes, we want to be supportive, but mostly start a fucking band so we have somebody to go watch, and we put on shows so that there were shows to go to because we wanted to go to shows, and and it's awesome. I know a lot of people in the alternative and underground world who get rubbed the wrong way by wanting to talk to them about something they did 40 years ago. But I had the awesome experience of getting to go on tour opening for Leonard Skinner for about 8 months. And
in Junkyard.
In Junkyard, and get to be friends with those guys. And midway through the process, I was sitting down in a room with Gary Rossington, who I learned to play guitar listening to their records, and going, so what's it like for you playing fucking Freebird every goddamn night for 40 years? Like, does that get old? And he's going, are you kidding me? Like, it's my whole, like, I show up every night and get paid to make people go insane listening to a song I wrote when I was 20 years old. How is that ever bad? And I was going like, dude, that is exactly the right attitude. Like, I'm incredibly grateful that this thing that I was a part of all those years ago still has meaning to people. And that it was pure enough not to have gotten sullied along the way, or like that it can just stand as it is, this thing that the three of us and a series of drummers created. And every drummer brought their own thing to the equation. The band changed as the drummers changed, almost always for the better. You know, each one brought something different and allowed us to broaden out in a different way. And I'm really proud of the music. I'm glad I'm not in a band with all those dudes anymore, because we have all moved in other different directions creatively. But I'm really proud of that band. I'm proud of Poison 13. I'm proud of the Junkyard records because we didn't put on spandex and dress silly. You know, like, I feel good about everything in my past. You know, but the fact that some of it resonates more than other things with people, I don't care. You know,
that's just the way it goes. It goes back to what I was saying.
It's just like well, I did this thing last week. I wasn't able to play it out all the way, but like, I was listening to this mixtape that I made on Spotify that's literally a copy of a cassette I just found from back in the early 80s from the van tours. And I was listening to this song called Christine Keeler by a band called the Glaxo Babies. They're a British band. They only made a handful of singles in one album. But I fucking love that song. I hadn't heard it in a decade, and I was playing it and listening to it going, I love this fucking song. And I went online seeing if there was any way to contact anybody from the Glaxo Babies to let them know that this dude in Texas is still listening to that single and thinks it's awesome. I wasn't able to find them, but I'll probably try again later. It just, you know, I got this awesome email. Let me see if it's sitting here. I'll read it to you because my memory's not what it should be. I got an email. I got a website that I don't even use anymore, chrisgates.com. And but this woman sent me an email through the website a couple of days ago. Where the fuck is it? The message says, Chris, it was around 1981 or 82. You guys did an in-store appearance at a record store on the Drag. Before you got started, a woman came in with her son in a wheelchair. He was probably high school age. Mom looked kind of nervous because you were punks, and as were some of the other folks in the store. You and Tim were playing some sort of portable amps, I think, like pig noses or something. Obviously no mics, so Randy was just cranking it up as much as he could, and the harmonies were just jolly. The young man in the wheelchair was really into it, and his mother looked so pleased that her son was having a good time. Thanks for the memory.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How can that be a bad thing, you know?
No, like, it doesn't get better than that. Like, I was just doing some shit being a silly 20-year-old, you know, but it made enough of an impression so that 35 years later, somebody took the trouble to write me about it. That's fucking awesome. Yeah. It's funny that Austin has become one of those cities, like, you know, people talk about like New York and LA and Austin. And I'm like, when the big boys started touring, nobody knew where Austin was. Where's that? You know, like,
sure.
You know, but yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, short of Los Angeles or someplace like, you know, that is like, I mean, the punk scene here was maybe a couple of hundred people most of the time. And still, not to discount the very first generation of bands that didn't make as big of a national splash, but like, you ended up with Big Boys and the Dicks and MDC and the Butthole Surfers and the Offenders and Scratch Acid and
Really Red and Really Red.
Right, Really Red from Houston. It's like, but they were all in the bands from Austin. They're completely different from each other.
Yep.
And the scene completely, so everybody supported all of them, and we all played together all the time. you know, and then you have other bands that were also awesome, like Glass Eye and Doctor's Mob, the band that our first drummer started, and like, you know, there was all these other bands that weren't quite punk rock, but they were still playing in that underground scene and doing their own thing, and they were awesome and weird.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, let me give you one last question about the big boys. I'll let you go.
Sure.
Which record? I'm of the opinion that everything you guys ever recorded is good. Like, and even all my other bands that I look up to and still listen to this day from that period, I can't really say that about everybody. But I think literally everything you guys did was good. As far as you looking back, which recording are you the most like? Well, that's the one where we really got it. You know, we really got on that one.
The thing for me that was happening back then, and it wasn't just us, it was lots of bands, is that every record came out pretty quick after the one before it, and every record allowed for a progression. Like, look at the first 4 Cure records.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the first 4 Wire records. Like, I loved those first few Cure records and Wire records, but the band was like a completely different band on every record. And like sometimes we were a completely different band on each side of the record, you know, and so it's hard to say which one's my favorite because each one represents a different creative era. Like for me, sonically, the last record is the best, but I pretty much produced the last record and I wrote more of it and I had more control over it. But production was something that I was interested in all along. And so like, you know, I think the last record was when everything we did, both in terms of music and production, really came together. It sounds really good. The performances are great, but it sounds really good. But that being said, I go back and listen to Lullabies or Fun and go like, these records sound pretty good too, considering we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And, you know, and even the Where's My Towel, which is so clean and so dry and not super representative of what we were doing, is still super cool as a unit itself. Even if the band was more chaotic, the songs still work really well in that format. So
yeah. Did you write the song "The Seed"? Who wrote that song?
That was one of the few songs that Biscuit wrote the words to, and I think I wrote the music.
That didn't end up on
really write lyrics much.
Okay.
You know, mostly it was like Tim or I would start the music, and then one of us would write the words, but usually we would write 2 verses and a chorus and then let Biscuit write the 3rd verse, so he was involved in it too. He didn't write a lot on his own. But like I think The Seed and 1 or 2 others, like I love the guy dearly, but like he was dark and he was moody, and when it came time to write lyrics, he wanted to write happy boat people. Well, fucking stop it, dude. Write what you're feeling. And most of the time he just wouldn't do it. He didn't want to tap into that. He wanted to be a happy clown guy and not really but I think on The Seed, you can hear some of that. It's coming out, you know.
Yeah, it's a great vocal. It's on some compilation record and never made it on a record. I think that rap music record. Yeah.
You know, I think I wrote the music and I'm pretty sure Biscuit wrote the lyrics. But yeah, you know, it was a real interesting mix, you know, with Tim's weird guitar playing and my weird bass playing, and you know, being able to switch and do something that was more traditional on guitar and
you know, more rock, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know, I learned to play guitar off of Bad Company records and Grand Funk Railroad records, and you know, and you know, we flipped a coin. I lost. I played bass. That's why we're still talking about the band, because if it had gone the other, I was a terrible guitar player and Tim was a terrible bass player, you know. But he did all kinds of really cool, interesting stuff on the guitar, and I was fine playing the bass. But I owned an electric guitar and 2 amps, and he didn't. So
I think you're a great bass player in all those songs.
I figured it out. You know, it worked well. The 2 of us worked very well together. You know, and Biscuit was a phenomenal showman. The only reason we got shows for the first 4 months we were a band was because Biscuit was out of his mind. You know, like because we couldn't play at all for the first. We were terrible for the first couple of months, You know, I have a recording. It's awful. You know? But people tolerated us because we were entertaining. And then we learned to play, you know.
The rest is history.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.